Okay, I'm just going to go over a quick overview on pages 84, 85, 86, and 87 in your instruction math book. These are the pages that have the blue edging on top. So looking at 84, there's not really anything for you to work on that page. It's just kind of showing you how you can use your base 10 blocks to subtract. Now the difference between addition and subtraction is when you are adding, you are constantly putting more pieces down to include into your number because you're adding more. But in subtraction, you're going to start with the amount that you have. And you take that answer and you start deleting more things from it. So if you look on page 84, what they've done is they've started with the number 365. Now the reason that one of their hundreds is shown as tens is because you're going to need to borrow. So what they did is they took one of their hundreds and they cut it up into 10 sticks. So it tells you right here that this 10 tens equaled that 100. So it was 100, 200, and these 10 sticks made the 300. Here's the 60, and then they had 5. But if you'll notice, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's only 5 10 sticks because again, they had to regroup or borrow. So they took one of these 10 sticks and they turn it into 10 ones. So that's why you see the 15 ones. The 15 ones came from that extra 10 stick. So once they have everything fixed and regrouped so that they can start marking out, then you can see subtraction. So they took out one of the hundreds. They had to take out 8 because it says 80, 8 of the tens, and then they had to take out 6 because there's the 6 of the ones. So this is just showing you how you can use those pictures or base 10 blocks to help you with subtraction. And that's your model it, okay? Now down at the bottom, they've done the same thing, but with expanded form words, in word form. So you see the 300, 6 tens, and 5 ones. And then they had to regroup. So they took one of the hundreds and made it 10. So that's where 16 came from. And then they took one of those 10s, so it turned it into 15, and made the 5 ones into 15 ones. Then they can start subtracting. They can take one of the hundreds away. That's going to leave you with a 100 left. They can take 8 tens away. That's going to leave you with 7 tens left. And they can now take 6 ones away, which will leave you with 9 ones. So then you put all those together and you get 179. Now over on page 85. Now the reason, and I know a lot of parents are like, well, why can't we just show them the regular subtraction? And we do. We are, if you'll look down here on the chart, this is the regular subtraction. But the reason that nowadays, especially with Common Core Math, that we want to show you, we want the students to understand why. We want them to know why they have 15 instead of just 5 written on the top of their subtraction problem. So that's the point of it. So let's look on page 85. And I know the answers were there, but I want us to kind of work it out. It says, now you will solve the problem from the previous page by first regrouping and then subtracting the hundreds, tens, and ones. So here is our problem, 365. That's our biggest number. That's what we're starting with. And we want to subtract the hundreds, tens, and the ones from it. It says, look at 365 in step 1. Can you subtract hundreds from hundreds, tens from tens, and ones from ones? Okay, well, let's look at our problem. Would we have enough hundreds to subtract 100 from it? Well, yeah. So on number 9, we're going to say we can subtract the hundreds. But look at your tens. Are we going to be able to subtract our tens? No, we don't have enough. We only have 6 tens. But not our tens. What about our ones? No, or ones. So the only one that we can subtract in our original problem would have been the hundreds. We're going to have to regroup for our tens, and we're going to have to regroup for our ones. So once again, for number 9, we can subtract the hundreds, but we're not going to be able to subtract our tens or our ones. There's just not enough. Okay, number 10 says, explain the regrouping used to go from step 1 to step 2. So what they're regrouping there is in the hundreds place. So on number 10, in order for us to have enough in our tens place, is we would have to mark out our 3. So we've got to regroup the 300 as, and what happens when I borrow from this 300, we're going to take one of those hundreds with us. So when we regroup from that 300, what's going to happen is we're going to change it from 200 to adding 100. We're taking that 100 away. So that's why we're writing that as 200. We're sliding. Okay, then after we have fixed the hundreds, then we're going to take this 100 that we just regrouped, the one we're borrowing, and we're going to add it to, so we're going to add that 100 to the tens place, which was our 60. So once again, we're going to mark out this 3, turn it into a 2, that 200. We're going to take that 100 that we just borrowed, and we're going to add it to this 60. So that's where we get that 16. Okay, that's where the 16 would come from if I was regrouping. All right, number 11. Oh, sorry, there's a second step on 10. I missed that. Second question on 10. So that was the first question. Regroup 300 as 200 plus 100, then add the 100 to 60. The second step, of course, is fixing that ones place because we just said the ones are not big enough. So now we've got to regroup this 160 because it's in the tens place as, we're going to change that to 15. So as 150 plus we're borrowing this 10 now. And then we're going to add that 10 to our ones place. So it's going to look like this. Okay. Now, I want to show you this too. So the reason we're writing it like this is because if we were to separate this by place value, let me just do that. If I were to separate this by place value, we are actually taking an entire 100, carrying it with us, and then we're putting that 100 with our tens place. Then we're taking an entire 10 and putting that with our ones place. That's why it's worded a little different than what we're used to, because we want you to understand that we're not just borrowing 1. If you're borrowing from the hundreds place, you're not borrowing 1, you're borrowing 100. If you're borrowing from the tens place, you're not just borrowing 1, you're borrowing a 10. So that's what it looks like so far. All right, now let's go to number 11. Number 11 says subtract each place. Okay, so we're now taking our place value and we're subtracting it. Okay, so we have 200, take away 100, which of course is going to leave us with 100. We now have 150. I'm going to look at this right here. We now have, let's see where they wrote that. Sorry. I want to make sure I'm writing it. Okay, they wrote it to the side. So we now have 150. Take away 80, because that's what's on our original problem, which is going to leave us 70. Okay, and then we have 15 ones, and we're going to take away 6, which should leave us with 9. All right, so that's your number. This is number 11. Okay, I think there's some more written here. Oh, and then they just want us to put them together. All right, so now we're going to add our hundreds back to our tens and our ones. So that's going to be 100 plus, we are left with 70 plus 9, which of course is going to equal the 179. So our final answer is 179. So I think they want you to write that down twice, okay? That's place value subtraction. Now again, this 200 minus 100, no problem there, but it was originally 300, but we had to regroup it. So there's that extra 100 over here in the tens now. And one of our tens is missing, but we regrouped it over here, and that's why you have a 15. Okay, number 12. Number 12 says explain how to subtract 3-digit numbers when you need to regroup hundreds and tens. Anytime that I would just write this, anytime you regroup, or just put when you regroup, you always add 10 to your original number. So if I'm regrouping from my hundreds, then I'm going to add 10 to my tens. If I'm regrouping from my tens, I'm adding 10 to my ones. You're always carrying 10. It always takes 10 to move to the next place value. You have to have 10 ones to go to the tens place. You have to have 10 tens to get to the hundreds place. You have to have 10 hundreds to go to the thousands. So just remember, you're always carrying 10 across. Okay, and then number 13 and 14 are just problems. This is the old school method, not any explaining to do. So 13 is 362. Take away 125, I believe. So let's look at that one. Our hundreds are fine. Our tens are fine. But these ones are not okay. So we're going to need to regroup and help out our ones place. So that means we're going to take one of our tens. We're going to regroup and add that 10. Just like we said, you're always carrying 10. So that's why it's ended up a 12, because we just added our 10 from our tens place. 12 minus 5, 7. 5 minus 2 is 3, and 3 minus 1 is 2. 237. The second problem was 425. 425. Take away 289. Okay, so let's subtract here. Hundreds are okay, tens are not, and ones are not. So this is where we're going to have a lot of regrouping. So we're going to take 100 to our tens. Now we need to take one of those tens to our ones. So notice I added 10 here and then 10 here, because when we're regrouping and carrying over, it always takes 10. 15 minus 9, 6. Good. 11 minus 8, 3. And 3 minus 2 is 1. Now, if you'll notice, when I did my regrouping, I started in the hundreds place and looked for where I would need to change. Students in 3rd grade, we still have trouble if we go this way figuring out. A lot of them will put a 15 and they never change this. So if you start in that hundreds place and work your way down, you're more likely to change those numbers as you move to the next place. So 136. Okay, so that's page 84 and 85. I'm going to flip my sheet over. Let's go ahead and go to 86 and 87. This is called Add On to Subtract. Your iReady book and your iReady lessons are going to love to use number lines. So on the number line, what they're doing is they start with the smallest number. So our smallest number was 137. So if you'll notice, the number line starts on 137. They like to make 10. So we know to go from 137 to 140 to the next 10, we're adding 3 more. So that's the first thing they did, was add the 3 to get us to 140. Then we can just count by tens. So that was 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Gets us to the 200. So we added 3. We added 60 to get to 200. And then we need to get to 205, which is what we started with. So they added 5 more to get to that 205. So added 3, 6, and 5. Put those together, and you get 68. So we know that the difference between them is going to be the 68, because that's how many it took us to add up. Okay, on page 87, there's nothing else for you to do on page 85. On page 87, you have your connect, so it starts on number 15. I'm just going to put it right here. Number 15 says start at 137. What is the next 10? So to get to the next 10, I need to add 3, because 137 plus 3 would bring us to my next 10 of 140. So in that first blank, we're going to put the 140. And then how many did we add? We added 3. And we want to keep that number separate. So we're at 140 now. Okay. All right. The first number is written in the chart. So they already added our 3 for us. So the 3 gets us to 140. That's why you see 140 next on the chart. Okay. Number 16. We're at 140. 16 says, how many 10s do you need to add to get from 140 to the 100 you need? Okay, well, we need 200, right? Because that was the answer we started with. So we're at 140, and they're wanting us to see how many 10s we would need to go from 140. So 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 would get us to the 200. So we would need 60 more 10s to get to 200. So in the chart, next to 140, we need to put a 6. And then to go from 200 to 205, we would just add 5 more ones. So the chart should look like this. We added 3. Then we added 6 10s to get to 200. There's the 200. Then we added 5 to get to the 205. So that's where 68 comes from, because there's 8 in the ones place. Okay. Number 18 is going to want us to do that. So in number 18, it's going to say addition problem. So we added 3 to get to 140. We added 60 to get to 200. We added 5 to get to 205. And we know all of that together is 68. So how many flour seeds does Perez have left? He has 68 seeds left. Okay, then they want us to do it on our own. So this is number 19. It's going to ask us to explain how you would add on to find this difference. So it's 202 minus 195. We're going to add on. So to do that, we need to get to our next. We're going to start with the 195. So we're going to say start. And you always start at the small number when you're adding on 195. We need to get to the next 10. So we're going to add 5 because 95 plus 5, of course, would get us to our next 10. Add 5 to get 200. Okay, so now we're at 200, comma. And we want 202, so add 2 to get to 202. So we added 5 and we added 2, period. Put 5 plus 2, which would get us 7. So we know that our answer is 7. There's a difference of 7 between 202 and 195. We could also count up 195, 196, 197, 198, 199, 200, 201, 202. We'd still get 7 as our answer. All right, and then you finally have your triad at the bottom. Let's look at it. This is number 20. Number 20 said, use what you just learned, place value chart, solve problems, separate sheet of paper. So it is, Edith had $600. She spent $84, and we want to know how much she has left. So you have learned different strategies on subtraction. So she started with $600. She has spent $84, and we're trying to figure out what's left. So on the add-on method, you're starting with 84. We want to get to the next 10. So to get to the next 10, we would need to add 6, because 6 plus 4 is 10, and that would give us 90. And then we would want to go from, if it was me, I would go ahead and go from 90 and add 10 more to get to 100. Now what I'm doing is boxing out what I've added. So we added 6, we added 10, and then to go from 100 to 600, we would have to add 500 more, and that would get us to our starting number. So we added 6, 10, and 500. 6 plus 10 plus 500 is 516. So we know the answer here would have to be 516 if you do the add-on method. Now, if you want to do the old school regrouping method, well, of course, it would look like this. We don't have enough tens, so we're going to borrow 100 and write that as 10 tens. We do not have enough ones. We're going to need to borrow a 10, write that as 10 ones. 10 minus 4 is 6. We already knew that that would be 6. 9 minus 8 is 1. We knew that would be 1 and 5. So there's the add-on method. And then there's what we call our borrowing or regrouping from our place value chart. That's number 20. Number 21, we have 1 sent and received 800 text messages. 800. He sent 379 text messages. How many text messages received? Okay, so we want to know the difference between being at 800 and 379. So on the add-on method, we're going to start with the small number, which is 379. We need to get to first to our 10, so we're going to add just 1. That's going to put us at 380. I would go ahead and add 20 to get to our next 100, which will bring us to 400. And then we want 800, so we're going to add another 400 to get to our original 800, which is what we started with. Okay, now I'm going to put all these together. That's 1 plus 20 plus 400, which we know is going to be 421. There's my answer. So if we do it by borrowing from place value, we have enough hundreds. We do not have enough tens, so we're going to borrow 100 and get enough tens. We do not have enough ones, so we're going to borrow a 10 and get it plenty of ones. 10 minus 9 is 1. 9 minus 7 is 2. And 7 minus 3 is 4. So we knew our answer would be 421. There's our add-on, and then our regular borrowing. So I hope that helps kind of explain. Now, Am I going to require third graders to do add-on? No, but it is a method that they can choose. On our borrowing, I am going to want them to start in that hundreds place and work their way down, which may be different than what they learn in second grade, but it will keep them from forgetting to mark this 10 out, which is what normally happens in third grade when we're borrowing. So keep practicing your subtraction and borrowing at home.